Alarms screamed through the halls of Riverbend Penitentiary. Red lights flashed, painting the gray concrete in a violent glow. Guards ran down the corridors, shouting into radios, but their words were drowned out by the deafening noise. Somewhere in Block C, metal clanged. A door slammed shut, trapping a guard inside. His radio crackled one last time before going silent. Inmates pressed against cell bars, eyes wide, watching the chaos unfold. In the control room, Officer Daniel's hands shook as he tried to restore power. Screens flickered. Cameras went dark one by one. The prison's most secure systems were failing, and no one knew if it was a glitch or something far worse. A shadow moved quickly across the yard outside. The perimeter lights were off. One of the towers went dark. Panic spread. It was clear someone was trying to take advantage of the lockdown. Daniels yelled for backup, but the voices in his headset were drowned by shouting and banging. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Guards ran from wing to wing, checking locks and doors. Every corner seemed to hide danger. Some cells were empty when they shouldn't have been. Others contained movement that didn't belong. Meanwhile, an inmate known as Carter slipped into the hallways, moving with precision. He was not supposed to be outside his cell. Security cameras that should have tracked him were blacked out. He approached the control room door. Another guard noticed too late. A struggle began. Metal keys dropped to the floor. The guard's flashlight spun wildly, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Downstairs, in the mess hall, other inmates whispered among themselves. Fear mixed with opportunity. Some hoped to escape. Others just wanted to survive. Every sound was magnified. The clatter of a tray, the slam of a door, the scream of a frightened guard. Daniels finally got one camera back online. The screen flickered, and then he froze. Carter stood outside the control room. His hand hovered over the door lock. Daniel's heart pounded. The entire prison could spiral out of control in seconds. A loud crash echoed from the upper floors. The walls shook. Something heavy had fallen. Guards ran toward the noise, but one by one, the radios went dead. Daniels could see Carter inside the control room now, just beyond the shattered glass. He reached for the main console. Suddenly, the door slammed behind Daniels. He spun around. No guard, no backup. Just empty halls and the echo of alarms. Carter's figure loomed in the room. The control room screens blinked to life for a moment, showing doors unlocking across the prison. Every lock was failing. Daniels realized the truth in a heartbeat. If Carter succeeded, the prison would descend into chaos. And at that moment, a gunshot echoed through the halls. A guard was down. Blood pooled near the door. Another alarm sounded, different this time, a warning tone no one had heard before. Daniel's breath caught. Outside, the yard was suddenly quiet. Too quiet. Then movement. Shadows darted along the perimeter. The outer fence had been tampered with. Someone was getting out. And then, just as he reached for the radio to call for help, the control room lights cut completely. Darkness swallowed him. He could hear Carter moving, the clicks of locks disengaging. The entire prison was slipping from their control. The last thing Daniel saw before the emergency lights flickered back on was a figure disappearing into the dark corridor leading toward the main gate. Someone was about to escape, and no one knew if they would make it out alive. Darkness swallowed the hallways of Riverbend Penitentiary. Daniel's heart pounded as he struggled to see through the dim emergency lights. The control room had been breached, and the sound of distant alarms echoed like distant thunder. Carter was moving fast, and Daniels knew that if he didn't act immediately, the prison could be lost. Footsteps pounded from the upper floors. A loud crash came from the library. Shelves had been overturned. Books scattered across the floor. Something heavy had broken. Somewhere nearby, a door banged open, then slammed shut. The chaos was spreading faster than anyone could respond. Outside the control room, the yard was no longer secure. Shadows darted near the fences. Daniels grabbed a spare key and bolted down the corridor. Every step felt heavier. He had to reach the gate before it was too late. In the mess hall, inmates were gathering. Some were running for safety, others were following Carter's lead. Makeshift weapons clattered to the floor. The smell of fear was thick. Daniels could hear a guard shouting into a radio, but no response came. The system was failing. The prison's most secure locks were being overridden. Carter appeared at the end of the corridor, a blur in the red emergency lights. He didn't speak. His focus was clear: reach the main gate. Daniels tried to intercept him. The two collided near a stairwell. Metal keys and papers flew in every direction. Daniels struggled to hold him back, but Carter was strong and desperate. Suddenly, A siren blared, different from the earlier alarm. The perimeter doors were unlocking one by one. Daniels realized with horror the outer gates were being tampered with. Someone had disabled the backup security system. Outside, the fence line had weak points, and now those weaknesses were exposed. A guard ran past, breathless, waving a radio that crackled with static. "He's heading for the main gate," the guard yelled. Daniels didn't wait. He ran after Carter, but the corridor split into multiple wings. Every door seemed to be opening automatically. Prisoners could slip through at any moment. At the main gate, chaos had erupted. One of the towers had lost its lights entirely. Shadows moved across the yard. Carter reached the gate and began tampering with the lock. Daniels arrived, skidding on the polished floor. He lunged forward, grabbing Carter's arm. They struggled, twisting and pulling. Then, from above, a rope ladder dropped from the roof. Daniels looked up. Another figure, an unknown inmate, was climbing down, moving fast toward the yard. Carter had allies. Daniels realized the scale of what was happening. This was no lone attempt. Gunshots rang out from the guard towers. Shouts echoed across the yard. Inmates screamed. The gates were almost open. Daniels tried to hold back Carter, but the lock gave way. The massive steel gate began to swing. A flash of moonlight revealed more shadows moving toward freedom. And then, just as Daniels reached for his radio to call for reinforcements, the rope snapped. The figure above tumbled onto the concrete yard with a loud thud. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Daniels looked at Carter, whose expression had changed from determination to shock. Somebody was down. Somebody was missing. And the main gate was now wide open. The night was no longer under control. The main gate hung open, creaking in the wind. Shadows moved across the yard, where broken fences and scattered debris marked the path of escape. Carter ran toward the perimeter, the adrenaline in his veins driving him faster than ever. Daniels chased him, every step echoing on the cold concrete. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Guards had regained partial control in some towers, but the prison was far from secure. Inmates poured into the yard from unlocked wings. Some ran blindly. Others moved with purpose, following Carter's lead. The chaos was total. A spotlight swung across the yard, catching the figure of an inmate slipping under the fence. Daniels shouted for him to stop, but his voice was lost in the noise. Carter reached the gate, struggling with the heavy lock mechanism. The metal groaned. Every second felt like an eternity. From above, the rooftops were alive. Another rope ladder dropped. A second inmate climbed down, landing with a heavy thump. Daniels turned to intercept, but more shadows appeared. Someone had planned this. It was organized. The prison was facing its first coordinated escape attempt in decades. Down one corridor, Officer Jenkins discovered a wing completely empty. Cells had been opened. Personal items were left behind as if the inmates had vanished into thin air. Panic spread among the remaining guards. Daniel's radio came alive with frantic messages, but most were cut off mid-sentence. Carter finally freed the main gate. It swung open slowly, then fully. He ran through it, and Daniels followed. Outside, the yard was chaos. Inmates scattered, some toward the fences, others toward the maintenance sheds. One of the tower's lights went out completely, leaving half the yard in darkness. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed near the north fence. Daniels turned and saw an inmate tangled in barbed wire. He screamed, struggling, but was quickly pulled back by two others. The perimeter had not been fully breached, yet. Daniels realized that time was slipping away faster than he could act. Above, the moonlight reflected off a metallic object. A shadow moved along the fence line, then disappeared. Daniel's stomach twisted. Someone had reached the other side, possibly already free. He ran toward the north fence but tripped on a fallen toolbox. Pain shot through his leg. From the control tower, a single spotlight caught Carter. He froze for a second, scanning the yard. Then he ran again, leading a group of inmates toward a section of fence left weak during maintenance. Daniels followed, grimacing against the throbbing pain in his leg. At that moment, a loud explosion rattled the far end of the yard. Smoke billowed into the night sky. Guards shouted, sirens blared anew. Inmates scattered in all directions. Daniels barely regained his footing as debris fell around him. And then, just as he reached the section of fence Carter had targeted, he saw him disappear behind it. Carter and two others had vanished into the darkness outside the prison walls. Daniel's chest tightened. One inmate was down in the yard, one missing, and the main gate had been compromised. The night had tipped completely out of control. and more than one person was now in serious danger. Smoke still curled across the yard. The main gate hung wide open, and shadows darted along the perimeter. Daniel's leg throbbed with pain, but he forced himself to move. He had to contain the chaos before more inmates got out. The sound of alarms had become almost meaningless. Some guards were injured. Others were shouting orders that went unheard over the noise. Broken cameras and flashing red lights painted the yard in a hellish glow. Daniels scanned the chaos, spotting movement near the north fence. Carter was gone, but others were still out there. Near the east wing, a group of guards tried to block a cluster of fleeing inmates. Shouts rang out, and a fight erupted. Metal clanged as one inmate swung a pipe, and a guard stumbled backward. The struggle was brief but brutal. Some prisoners fled while the rest were restrained. Daniels ran toward the perimeter fence where Carter and 2 others had disappeared. The ground was littered with debris, fallen tools, overturned benches, even a broken ladder. Something metallic glinted in the moonlight. It was a set of keys. Whoever dropped them had been in a hurry. From the control tower, a spotlight moved slowly across the yard. The movement revealed an empty section of the fence. Someone had gone through, but Daniels couldn't see who. The realization hit him. At least one inmate had escaped. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the west yard. Another inmate had climbed the maintenance shed roof. He teetered for a moment, then jumped down into the yard. Daniels sprinted toward him, but the man had vanished behind a stack of crates. The chaos was spreading beyond his reach. At the control room, systems flickered back on briefly. Cameras returned to life, but only partially. Screens revealed groups of inmates moving toward the far perimeter. Daniel's stomach sank. The prison's defenses had failed in multiple areas at once. Then, an unexpected sound echoed across the yard. A gate at the south end was swinging open. Daniel's eyes widened. He hadn't noticed anyone near that section. Another inmate was making a break for it. He ran toward the gate, but before he could reach it, a loud crash rang out. One of the perimeter fences had collapsed. Concrete and metal fell with a deafening sound. Smoke and dust filled the air. Inmates scrambled, guards shouted, and Daniels felt completely surrounded. He realized with horror, someone was missing, someone was trapped, and the prison's night of chaos was far from over. And then, over the loudspeaker, a voice came through, panicked, trembling. "Officer, Carter is outside." Daniels froze. Outside. That one word confirmed it. One of the most dangerous inmates was now free, and the night had only just begun. Carter was outside the walls. Daniel's heart raced as he realized the true scale of the disaster. The prison's outer perimeter had been breached. Moonlight illuminated the yard littered with debris. Smoke from earlier explosions still hung in the air, curling around toppled fences and overturned equipment. From the control tower, the spotlight scanned the grounds. Shadows moved quickly, darting behind crates and low walls. Daniels ran, ignoring the pain in his leg, trying to intercept any inmate before they could vanish into the surrounding woods. A sudden shout came from the south fence. Another inmate had slipped through a maintenance gap. Daniels spun around, but by the time he reached the spot, the figure had disappeared. Someone was outside. Someone was free. Inside, the prison systems were slowly coming back online. Cameras flickered, but key sections remained dark. Cell doors were checked, but some inmates were missing. Daniels realized the lockdown had failed almost entirely. A distant alarm sounded differently, sharper, more urgent. A guard yelled from the perimeter, pointing toward a small service road. Carter was moving fast, dragging another inmate with him. Daniels sprinted, heart pounding. Suddenly, a vehicle engine roared. A white van appeared, lights off, parked near the tree line. Carter and 2 others ran toward it. Daniels raised his radio, calling for backup, but the signal crackled and failed. No help was coming fast enough. Carter reached the van. The driver nodded, and the doors swung open. Just as they were about to climb in, a flare of gunfire erupted from the towers. Daniels dived for cover, watching as the van's tires screeched on gravel. Carter rolled into the vehicle. The engine roared. The van sped away into the night, leaving chaos behind. Daniel's stomach twisted. One of the most dangerous inmates in the country was now free, along with accomplices. He looked at the yard. Smoke, debris, broken fences, injured guards. Riverbend Penitentiary had been pushed to the edge. He radioed the control room again, desperate. "All units, perimeter secure. Anyone outside, apprehend immediately." Static was the only reply. Daniels knew the night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And then, movement caught his eye near the north fence. Another inmate, crouched low, creeping toward freedom. Daniels ran, shouting. But before he could reach them, a loud bang echoed. The fence shuddered violently. A spotlight went dark. Somebody else was escaping. And Daniels realized the nightmare was far from over.